10 by 10 is a collaboration between musicians and visual artists. We pair them together and ask them to make parallel works based on a shared concept or theme. We're excited to share a sneak peek of these works. We're going to see sketches of the musical compositions as well as digital versions of the screen prints.
Just thinking about, what you have that's not ideal circumstances, not perfect circumstances, and making away with it anyway.
There are still fundamentally some limitations on what you can do as a composer with an orchestra. It's a rare and absolutely incredible opportunity. It's also important to remember what a limitation can provide.
And after talking to Andrew about working with limitation, working with challenges, and what kind of gets created out of that, really changed the way I made the prints.
The printmaking process of having multiple layers, the fact that you can have a work of art that's a composite of many different elements.
Some of the layers were intentionally hard to print. And you can see that in the light blue layer. In each print, it's slightly different because it went all the way to the edge of the screen print frame. It was way too big for the screen, and I just did it anyway because of what we'd been talking about.
I'm looking to focus on the specific images that are included in the prints that Michelle has made. And one of those is a feather. And so this particular excerpt is a representation of the feather in that image. It's zooming in on that.
The print that I made is not like any of my other work. It is an absolutely new piece of work, and it's completely, my wife, who has endured this long birthing process with me, had said that it takes a lot of time to change. There's a lot of work involved in doing something new, and you don't realize. Sometimes you don't realize how long it's been, how long it really takes. This was it really was a new thing for me to do.
an idea of a mixing of elements. Even those three elements, the motion, the memory, and the place, is really interesting to me.
I was so excited about the idea of how can I take this thing that's really important that we don't quite know everything about, and that's very ephemeral, like music, and translate it in a way that it could be seen, like we could hold on to it, right? That desire to sort of make it tangible.
Something visual, you can hold it, you can see it, you can put your finger on it, and then music is so intangible, because it's nothing, it's just sounds. You can't hold on to it. All you can do is experience it, and it has to happen over time, and then maybe in your memory of the piece.
When Amy started talking about this choir group for seniors with early stage memory loss, it had been something that I had started researching. I've been working with gestures for many years, but some of the important points about gestures are that people tend to gesture more when they're remembering something or something visual. They can sometimes help prompt memory. They're sort of something that everybody needs to sort of do to think. And so I often would prompt somebody for a gesture recording session to remember something visual from the past. So this idea of place and the question of home came into play, and that seemed like such a good fit, like a great question to ask the folks in this group. What was your favorite place you call home, is like the question that we came up with together.
I'm the accompanist for a choir which is called the Good Memories Choir, and the choir is specifically for people who are experiencing the beginning of dementia or Alzheimer's, and they come with their care partners. And then there's also a horde of volunteers. So Julian is a member of the choir, and when I announced this project and I said, does anybody want to talk? Does anybody want to be recorded? He was one of the first to jump up and say, sure, I'll do it.
So what I did was come in with microphones and my camera to record the video, with a Connect motion sense camera, and gathering the data points of the movement. Just by that question Amy and I had determined in advance would be our sort of starting place question, which is, what is your favorite place that you have called home? And Julian just ran with it. It was just apparent in the questions. Therefore, the gestures that Julian makes are in response to place and are enacting that memory of that place. So I think for me, it was just like that was my work, was just setting that up and then kind of figuring out, how do I visualize this material?
So it's almost like, we took that same source material, turned it in 2 dimensions, turned it into 4 dimensions. It's just, it's very interesting. And if I had to have picked a color, if I was imagining a color in my mind, it's almost exactly the color that you ended up using. It's never something that I labeled or whatever, but when I saw it, I was like, yeah, of course that's the color that she would have chosen. It's kind of weird. Maybe it had to do with his description of the brick in the building, or just the kind of heartwarming, charming ways he described the people and the scenes around him.
I was thinking of that sort of color that the gesture movement is, but it could have been any color. And I emailed Julian and just said, is there a color you would associate with this memory? And he described this color, and I just tried to make it as close as I could to that description. But interesting, because I feel like it's a color of an old co-op. My parents in Chicago live in an old co-op, and I think I know which building he's describing as his childhood home in New York, and it's a distinctive, really lovely brick color.
What about those 3 elements, the motion, the memory, and the place? And so I'm using them as 3 musical elements. The motion is gestures. They're going to be dozens of different gestures that kind of get repeated. And then this through line of memory as a lifetime, an encapsulation of a lifetime. And I think one big difference between the two mediums is that music takes place in time and visual art is just there. And so that's like a really interesting connection, because Susie's work also is like, it's like a motion that's been captured in one single image. It's interesting juxtaposition of how these things are represented. So the memory element of the music is going to be kind of the most narrative one that's going to transpire. And so that's my melodic material that's happening. And then it's got this foundation, which is the idea of home, which is kind of more like visual art, where it's a little bit more static and changes, but very slowly over time. Something that I wonder about all the time. I think about if I were to take this same source material and work on it on Monday, would I come up with the same interpretation if I worked on it on Wednesday instead? And certain things, I think the answer is yes, it would. There's a certain way that this is going to be interpreted, and then there's also no. There's so many different variations, little subtleties that would change and stuff like that. And I mean, of course, that's one of the beauties of art, is the infinite possibilities.
Oh man, we just met and had a conversation. And I guess we filled each other in on concepts that we were both working on at that moment in our lives, you know. From the natural growth of a conversation, the idea came about. Carlos, you're like on my lower right, so if I look down like that, I'm looking at you, you know.
I want to start in a new project in my mind about excesses and about departure and about cycles. And then Ben brought up like the beat connection, like recurrences of either excesses or patterns, but instead the spaces in between.
So now I'm close to it, and I'm thinking of different parts of the body and how to zone in on that, whether it's you know, a hand or a mouth, a foot or leg, something that generates rhythm that I'm eventually going to throw inside of an orchestra before that gets to the instruments or to the paper. You know, I'm moving my body and zoning in on my body, whether if it's clapping or singing or moaning. You know, we make sounds, we moan. And so people, you know, with those ideas come down and they get translated certain ways. So now I'm closer to Carlos's story.
Also talk about like the universality of our like body, and one element that most recently called my attention is the mouth, our mouth, like as an entity. That was a trigger point for me.
It reminded me of a story about how the New Orleans cats really thought where funk, their version of funk, comes from. And it's the stuff that slips through the space and falls underneath. It's all like all that nice dirty stuff, you know. And when you, even if you think about the mouth, you have an idea of the sounds that it makes, but it's so much you miss all the other things that happens with the mouth.
Because I always thought about mouth, you know, as like a very strong subject matter, just the mouth itself, but having it, like just muting it, or just like somehow like pausing it and like watching it or observing it from a different perspective.
The piece that I'm writing in all of this, I'm basically doing it from a diddly bow, which sometimes with the one string and the resonator, you know, it reminds me of that, of all the things that you can miss. You know, that there's a lot of things you can miss that one idea can give to you. One idea, one string, you know, and so take that one idea and just like try to toss it in a formation of the orchestra that you know, that is a new formation.
It's not the mouth as a communication device. It's just so like mundane that becomes like we take it for granted. So that's what the animations are focusing on. That's what the illustration also focuses on. It's just like somehow exploding. It's just like, you know, going and letting it itself be.
thing, and just another hand catching up. And then, you know, this when you find like the real connections, like, you know, like how we found out we had a mutual friend and mutual time in this space, like in this physical space. Then you find a line in between these two separate humans that meet at a certain time, you know, in this project right here. And so with me remembering the story that Carlos talked about, you know, that's like, man, I know that story, you know. I'm a part of that story. We all are, you know, a part of that vibe.